All right, I'm going to clip that right there. We'll go ahead and get started because it's 2:02. 2:02. Sonny Williamson, and Karen mentioned Sonny. Sonny Williamson was, you might say, my fish house liar that I looked up to. Not only was he a good storyteller, but he was a historian like no other. I mean, he's written multiple books and things. And he and his wife Jenny were doing tours over to the Cape when they really weren't popular to do. And matter of fact, they would stay over at the lighthouse, and like nobody wanted to stay and be, the summertime keepers. And so they had the place to themselves all summer long. What a nice little gig going on. And he started something called the Mule Train Beach Tours. And he started with the mule train because the Park Service had given him and Miss Jenny a Kawasaki mule, not the real one that eats grass, but the Kawasaki one that eats gas. There's a little rhyme going on there. But then they would ride around, and they started, people would come ask him questions, and he being a local historian, and so he kind of put two and two together and said, we might be able to do this and maybe make a business out of it. But I met him over there. I'm teaching school at the time, so this was years ago, Miss Jameson Ipock. This was years ago. We taught together, by the way. This was years ago. And I said, look, if you ever get too busy that you need some help, wow. And the next year, he and Miss Jenny put me to work. We say work. I mean, I got paid to go to the Cape. I know. What a gig. And tell stories. He told me, he said, if we don't take anybody during the day, we'll give you $30. I said, oh, what a bargain. And then, per person, anyway. With that said, one year, or one week when we did that, I said, look, he had written a bunch of books, all his history books. And I taught history, by the way, so I was always interested. I said, just pay me in books. So this is one of the books that he paid me in that week that I had, and I got some more there. But and this is called, y'all can read, right? And you got to say it right now. It's the Fish House Lars. Fish House Lars. All right. And he wrote in it, so it's very special to me. He wrote in it. So he says, to Chris, Carter County's number 2 Lar. All the best. And then he says, P.S., perhaps Rodney will do better in the future. Because he considered himself number 1, and of course then if I was number 2, then that meant Rodney was number 3. So in the note from Sonny up here, and I was thinking about it. I don't read very well, and I say that, and I was an educator. And I went to reading lab first grade. I always want to read ahead, I want to assume that they're going to say this. So I'm going to attempt to read this to you. I have read it before. This is a note from Sonny, and we're going to explain to you what a fish house lar is. Okay, and this is per Sonny, and he says, often the question is exactly what is a fish house lar? He said, I am never fully prepared to answer, but have given it a lot of thought lately, and the best I can come up with is that it's an individual who loves rich history and storytelling heritage of our coastal region, that he is willing to stick his neck out to be called a lar. Okay? The tales we tell as lars, are the same stories which have been passed down verbally for generation to generation. Over the years, they have been added to, modernized, changed until only the truth remains. Truth remaining is that they are intended strictly for the entertainment, and even thought, though we sometimes poke fun, it is never done with malice. And that's what I want you to keep in mind, because I'm going to use some names that some of y'all might know later. And I do it in a nice way. I love these people. So anyway.
Well, the names I'm going to use, I'm not giving the proper name for.
See, it's not as good a story. Anyway, I will.
Well, wait a minute.
I'm retired, so I don't give a shit.
Let's back up.
You're not retired. You got to watch out.
I didn't worry
I understand.
I'm going to tell you a little something about somebody, and I'm going to use somebody else's name.
Don't use mine.
Well, I could use yours.
All right. Well, you just hold it right there.
Anyway.
Okay. This is important to remember because that's what it's all about. Just good, clean fun. Although I have known many tellers of tall tales back then, none of them were ever referred to as liars. To the best of my knowledge, the term fish house liar was coined by Captain Josiah Bailey. She just mentioned him earlier. Back when there were several practicing tellers of tales and dubious tales about Carteret County. I first mentioned some of these very individuals in my newspaper column when referring to the speakers at the gathering on Harker's Island, where several of these racketeers, did I say that right, preceded me to the platform and proceeded to tell every story I had planned, claiming that they were their own. I know this to be true, one said, because it happened to my grandfather. Although I readily admit to someone sometimes stretching the point to make a good story better, I have never blamed my shortcomings on my sainted grandfather. Nevertheless, the only word I know bigger than mayonnaise, there was at one time several individuals proudly proclaimed to be Carteret County's fish house liars. Our two politicians went first, below the dignity of their office, I was told. That statement alone would qualify them both. Then our beloved founder, Captain Josiah, passed to his reward, leaving us certainly no fault of his own. Next to go was Captain Jim Willis. And I met Captain Jim, if some of you all remember him. He wouldn't say he was from Atlantic Beach. He said he was from Bogue Banks. All right, Captain Jim from Bogue Banks. All right. Then James Allen bit the dust. He could never decide whether he wanted to be a musician, a boat builder, or a liar. The money in boat building finally won out, which brings us around to Joel. And that's Joel, not Fodry back there in the back, but Joel Hancock. Joel was an honorable man and a fine storyteller, but to tell the truth, he was just too embarrassed to be seen in public with the rest of us. Finally, Rodney and I were flabbergasted to learn that our favorite moderator, Squires Taylor, was a lawyer and therefore overqualified. This left just the two of us. Rodney is far too fine of a gentleman to be involved with off-color tales, so here I am in the raw without apologies. Sonny Williamson, Martiaburg, North Carolina, 1995. So there's Sonny telling you what a fish house liar is, and I went to start with that there. So anyway.
And Chris, I didn't have the chance as Chris did. Chris is the older one, but we used to run together. You see, Chris now, remember I told you that something about this? Chris is the white-headed one, and I'm the bald-headed one. Anyway, he did have the opportunity to be part of Sonny and Rodney also. I did mingle a little bit with Rodney in the latter part. I've done a few skits with him. Rodney's a fine fella. Just remember that they're the ones started this, and we may not tell it just like they do, but I'm gonna share stories as I know it. But Rodney and Sonny were the main.
Well, and what I have done is I have taken bits and pieces of all these storytellers and made them mine, and then I've collected my own stories. So I'll share with you today some of, and I'll make, this is a good Rodney story, and I'm going to try to do the best I can with it, or this is a good Sonny story, or Davy Yeomans. I got to mention, Davy Yeomans was one of the politicians in there that he was talking about, and I'll mention Mr. David a couple of times. So,
but you also need to remember that, like they quoted before, we're going to tell you stuff, and we may stretch it, bend it a little bit. You can't, as they quoted, this is not me, you can't let the truth get in the way of a good story.
That's right. That's a Sonny quote.
We can tell you something and you're not going to laugh, but we can add to it. And then when you tell it, you can add to it.
Right. All right.
So
you want me to go?
You want to go?
I want to get the ones that I can tell of other people, and I'll just get these out the way, and then I can tell some of mine.
Okay.
This is a good Sonny story, and you may have heard this, but on a mule train, this is probably the first story that I learned to tell, and actually could hold people's attention. But and you got to kind of picture yourself at Cape Lookout. All right, so we've just arrived at Cape Lookout, and the first thing that you see is Cape Lookout Lighthouse, right? 165 feet tall, about 32 feet across the bottom, about 13 feet 2 inches across the top, standing just beautiful. I mean, I think it's not only the I think it's the nicest light, but the prettiest lighthouse too. And I used to tell them this too, that not only is it beauty, but it's got brains. It's the smartest lighthouse, okay? Because the black and white diamonds face east and west, isn't that right? And the white ones face north and south. So if you're going in a boat and you want to know what direction you can go, not only do we have the prettiest lighthouse, but they have the smartest. And then on the tour there, I'd look at the husband, I'd say, it's hard to get beauty and brains in the same package. And he would say. So I didn't know if he was talking about his wife was ugly or she was smart. I'm not sure which there, but anyway. But that was not our first lighthouse that we had. Did y'all know that? We had another lighthouse that was about 96 feet tall. June the 2nd, 1812, James Fulford was named the light keeper over for that lighthouse by James Madison. Y'all remember James Madison? Y'all are old then if y'all remember James Madison. All right, he was our president at the time. I don't remember him. I'm not that old. But anyway, I did remember studying about him. So James Madison. And at the beginning of this being built, mariners began to complain that it was just not tall enough. 96 foot tall, red and white horizontal stripes. I've never seen any pictures of it. I've seen like a painting rendition of it, but no like actual photographs or whatever. Because, and I say this, because the other lighthouse was built and that one was still there. We had two lighthouses at one time standing on that property. And again, from 1812 to 1857, Congress acted just as quick as they do now on getting good legislation passed. So they finally allocated enough money to build this lighthouse that we have here in 1857, $45,000. What a bargain, huh? And they built the lighthouse that we have now, November 1st, 1859, that light first shone, everything, okay? And the years went by, and there was two lighthouses in that same spot. Well, not the same spot, you know what I'm talking about, in close proximity, probably about 100 yards or so away. Matter of fact, if you go over there, you can see some of the, where the debris is, where that old lighthouse used to stand, okay? But at the time, there were also the houses and summer kitchens and the whale oil lamp house, and there was a bunch of houses along there. If you see pictures from years ago, the pine trees weren't there, the dunes, it was all kind of flat land. It was amazing how, Mother Nature kind of changes things. So they said, this old structure that was there since 1812 needed to go. So they hired a crew, and they were from off. Now, right now, you have to stop because I explain to people where off is. So some of you all probably know where off is, right? And I used to tell them, I said, I'm off.
But you're from off.
I'm off, but you're from off. All right? And that's so off are people that came, and I think the term started like from off the banks or off the island. If you were from off, you lived somewhere else, okay? So they hired these people from off. Some of you all are from off, right? So anyway, that's another story. You're not off, hopefully. All right, so they hired these people from off to come there, and they came there with their normal way of doing things, which was dynamite that thing, right? But when they showed up, it's sitting on sand, it's 100 yards from the other lighthouse and all these other buildings, and they said, this is just impossible, we can't do this. But they did come up with this idea that they were going to take this strategic brick out right along the bottom of the lighthouse, okay? And engineers, smart people, even though they were from off, they're still smart, okay? Pulling those brick out, and they were going to get to that last brick. Y'all know already what's going to happen. And they were going to pull that last brick out, and it would fall. So they got to busy working. Well, as they were working, they were thinking like, we need somebody really quick to get that last brick out, right? Well, locals, we were kind of, really paying attention here and trying to, help out when we can. So one of the folks suggested that Uncle Billy Hancock, and I've not introduced Uncle Billy. Uncle Billy was my 5th great-grandfather on my father's side, okay? Well, if you go on up the little tree there, you know how it goes, and it branches out everywhere.
He was the 4th on his mother's.
What did somebody said one time? We don't have a tree, we have a wreath. Anyway, with that said, somewhere on the wreath. Anyway, it's Uncle Billy. Uncle Billy, if he was here today talking to you, he would say, and he wouldn't be exaggerating, that he was the fastest man in the world. And to him, he would not be exaggerating. All up and down the East Coast, he was known to be a pretty quick fella. You're talking about Shackford Banks over there with those ponies. If you wanted the horse a couple bucks, he'd run you one down. There you go. They told this story. They said, you got to think about it, back in the day. They said the wind was blowing good one day, and he got kind of to the lead of wind up in the marsh, and some redheads that kind of gathered up along the marsh there just kind of to stay out the wind there. And he ran out in the shallows where the redheads were and grabbed a couple in the air and carried them home for supper. And Mrs. Hancock said, "Where do you get those from?" He said, "I just caught them." So
now that's the truth.
That is the truth. See, they laugh like it's against. It's the true story. I mean, hey, couldn't he have? It's possible, right? So anyway, they said, Uncle Billy, we'll get him. So you can kind of picture the thing. They approached Uncle Billy, and Uncle Billy said, "I'm not going to be cheap." He said, $5. Because, they had to figure he's got to get there and get pretty quick. I mean, he's putting his life on the line. It's a little harder than running a horse down. I mean, come on now. So you can kind of picture the scene. Schools have let out. The Cape Lookout School. There was a school over the Cape. Grandma went there. People from Wade Shore all the way from the Rice Path. You all know where the Rice Path is like Soldier Path. Soldier Pathers. We're kin to them, by the way. That's why they talk funny down there. Go to the Big Oak Drive-In, talk to some of them people there. Yeah, all right, yeah, okay, so you all know. So anyway, people from the Rice Path and Wade Shore had come and gathered. For one thing, they wanted to see, this lighthouse. That even though it was short and stumpy and ugly, they still loved it. It was near and dear to the heart. They wanted to see, who doesn't want to see a lighthouse fall down? I mean, hey, that's the big news. But if the truth was really known, they just wanted to see just how fast Uncle Billy was.
How fast he could run.
Yeah. So Uncle Billy, you kind of picture the scene. People have gathered, clam bake, oyster roast, pig picking. It's just a big festive time. Uncle Billy pulls up along the shore there, and the crowd, in his skiff, the crowd kind of parts.
Wait a minute. Come on in.
Like right now, see? Yeah. Uncle Billy's coming up, the crowd's parting. There it comes.
Sit right there, introduce yourself, because you're the one who's going to
Well, I've not missed a Parlor Talk all summer, and I had an appointment in Newport.
Well, I'm glad you made it.
We're picking on you.
I figured so. I got, now it's excited.
Look at you. So the crowd kind of part. Uncle Billy's going up along the shore. He's dragging a maul behind him and going up in the sand there. He gets to the bottom of that there.
I was hoping you was going to do. Give me that rig right there.
All right. Let's see how long the cord is. All right. He gets out to the bottom of that lighthouse. He's like he's in the sand trap. He gets, takes him a couple practice swings. He swings with all his might. He hits that brick. He turns to run, and he slips.
We ain't got that much cord.
Oh, man. He slips and falls on all fours right in front of that clumbering lighthouse. I just got my knee replaced, by the way. Look at that. 14 weeks. 14. Well, this is not going to work. 14 weeks. Anyway, the story kind of shifts now, see, to the Beehive. The Beehive was Cleveland Davis's store. If you ever go on Harker's Island and you know where the Fish Hook restaurant is, some of y'all nod your head. All right, right behind that along the shore was Cleveland Davis's store. That's where the mail showed up. That was the fish house. That's where the fishermen would meet. And there was a couple fishermen in there that just didn't have the opportunity to go to see just how fast Uncle Billy was. And they were kind of sitting on the edge of their seat, about like you are now, wondering what happened to Uncle Billy. You know what happened. And the young fella telling the story, he says, and of course the guy looks at him and he says, "What? Well, gee, forever, what happened to Uncle Billy? How fast was he? How fast could he run?" And the fella telling the story says, "I don't know how fast he could run, but he could crawl about 35 miles an hour." I tell that in memory of Sonny Williamson.
And all that's the truth.
It is the truth.
Now, I want to touch up just a little bit on the lighthouse.
All right, go ahead.
I went over on a tour one night with the whatever they are over there now. Anyway, they were doing a lighthouse talk. Well, one of the park rangers that was doing the talk, he was from Oklahoma. He wasn't from here.
Do they have lighthouses in Oklahoma?
Well, anyway, if any of you all are not noticing that I might have a little brogue, can you all tell where I'm from? I mean, if you can't,
Can you understand anything he's saying?
I'll explain it. You know, and our brogue is dwindling down. I work with city folks, and I try to talk like them in the daytime, what time, so they can understand me. But I'm trying to go heavy brogue here today. But anyway, this fellow was up here, and most of the people, and I tried to mind my own business, but I always get in trouble. Anyway, he was telling all about the lighthouse, and you know, I'm back here like, that ain't the way I heard it. I mean, I didn't say nothing, and the people picked up that I had the accent. Well, anyway, one of the questions was why did we have, they call it the checker, we call it the diamond pattern on ours, and the Hatters has the circle, the candy cane circles. I really don't know, but you know, I was back there, I said, well, I know why. And he said, well, sir, go ahead. And well, anyway, I started talking, well, everybody gathered to me, and I said, the story I heard was back in the day, the painters got drunk the night before and got confused in which way to go. And that's because actually Diamond Shoals is off of Hatteras. That's the story but anyway, that park ranger got real upset with me. And matter of fact, when we come back on the boat, because he was there trying to talk, well, I was back minding my own business. The boat was leaning to one side because everybody wanted to hear
your stories.
My stories.
Yeah, the real story.
And as far as I'm concerned, they're all true.
Yeah, they're all true. Well, and part of that, which, you know, I could have made that story a lot longer. But in the records, it talks about diagonal checkers. So it don't talk about diamonds, but diamonds sounds so much more romantic.
Yes. Yeah, it sure does.
Don't it?
And look, and I'm sure Chris does it too. Some of your audience, whatever you kind of pick with or whatever, you got to sort the truth from the bull. We call it. I'm gonna tell you a little story I ought not tell it. I'm gonna try to clean it up a little bit. But anyway, it was a couple summers ago. My brother-in-law, he's got his wife they're from Pinehurst. Well, he brought a group of people down here, and they seem to be infatuated the way that me and Heidi live, because we're all the time on the boat, we're all the time to the banks, the horses, whatever. Anyway, so when they come down here, they wanted to go to Wade Shore and get in that crowd, the party crowd. Anyway, they decided they wanted to follow us. You know, we think we live a pretty small, secluded, simple, don't like to be bothered. But anyway, I said, sure. I said, I'll take you over to see the ponies. Well, we went to a place, I'm not going to tell you where it's at because there'll be somebody there the next day. Anyway, no, I'm picking. We went in Bald Hill Bay. You couldn't have planned, I couldn't have planned this out for months to have worked any better. When we pulled in there, the tide was down, the ponies was right on the shore. I'm telling you, right on the shore, there was a little baby pony there running along with his mom.
I didn't tell you, I was back there saying, release the pony.
But anyway, it was the perfect set, you know. So I get out and I'm kind of talking about the horses a little bit. The men folks, they really could care less. They were toting beer. They didn't care. But anyway, as we was walking up to the beach and I was talking about the ponies being there 1500s, trying to give a little brief description of their age, whatever. And directly this one of the girls says, come on, he's telling the story. Let's. Well, that just egged me on. So, anyway, we get on up and they walk by that taking pictures and we walk up the path. And by the time we're waiting for everybody else to come along, I just happened to stop right in front. Well, you know, horses on the banks, they're going to
eat grass
and then leave a mess. We're going to leave it like that. So I just conveniently stopped, and I like to pick too. So anyway, But I was waiting up. They come on up there, and I said, some of these ponies have been in the 60s, 70s. People had cabins over here, and they kind of got blended with domesticated horses. I said, but some of them are true horses from the shipwrecks from the 1500s. And they're sitting there, and I'm telling you, their eyes as big as pie plates. And I said, but only a local can tell. He said, a local? I said, yeah. I said, it's took me a long time. I said, you're on the right track. I said, but I can pretty much tell. I can just about guarantee you what horse is what. So they're standing there. I said, I hate to do this. So I went down and picked up it was a dry piece. It was anyway, I picked that up. I said, this looks like.
You didn't buy it.
No, wait a minute. I said, this here this looks like, and I'm not going to say the word, they just recorded, you know what I'm talking about. I said,
word for poop.
Yeah. I said, now you can really tell if you smell it. I said, it's got a different, and I done like, I said, that's it right there. Well, they picked the piece up. Wait a minute. And they smelled it. I said, come on. I said, did it smell any different? It was like horse shit to me. So, anyway, I said, here, smell this piece. And they were smelling both. It smells the same to me. I said, well, if you're uncertain, and I'm going to do this sometime because I'm going to start charters. I'm going to carry me some brownies and put in my pocket. I said, if you're really unsure, you take a bite. No, I didn't take a bite. And of course, they all called on finally. I said, what you've heard on this beach today is 100% horse, and you finish it. But that is a true story.
Well, and see, you start talking about the horses, and they are about 99% Spanish Mustang. If you know your history, you're a history guy, no horses here when the English showed up. They brought them with them, and the shipwrecks is why we have horses over to the banks, and they are now protected by the federal government.
Federal government, yes.
1996.
Yes.
Bill Clinton was president. He signed that.
Yeah.
That leads into another. Can I?
Yeah.
That leads into another story. This is Davy Yeomans. I'll say this. I had a couple of Davy Yeomans ones, but this kind of leads to Davy Yeomans' story here. You kind of mentioned the camps that were to the banks and stuff. Well, Mr. Davy Yeomans, he was one of our county commissioners back in the day, and he would go to court with some of the folks that couldn't make it or whatever. But Davy Yeomans told this story one time, and like I said, he was the only politician that I know probably always told the truth. So this is one. Jay puts his head down. So this is a story that he told me one time. He had a home over to the banks, over to Cape Lookout. You remember that? He had bought the old life-saving station boathouse and had moved it down on his property. So if you ever go over there on one of our tours that Karen was talking about, I'll take you by there, and it looks like the old boathouse now. I wish they left it like David's place, but because it don't look like David and Miss Claire Mathilda. You go by, Miss Claire Mathilda would be cooking some clam chowder, and that smell would be coming out there. He had an old hand pump out front, and it was about 6 foot deep. Because if you know anything about Outer Banks, is salt water and fresh water kind of meeting all together there, and the salt water pushes that fresh water to the surface, so you don't need to be too deep there. But he always called it the fountain of youth. So, and he lived to be a right old age there. But he said he was over there one evening, and he said a mama loggerhead turtle came crawling up on the beach. And one year that Sonny and I were doing the tours there, we started doing evening tours because there was so many turtles. It was like 3 or 4 a night would come up, and we'd go over there and find some turtles. A little sidebar here with that. One night I was over there with a group, and Keith Rittmaster. Anybody know Keith Rittmaster? Some of you, oh, good, yeah, I love Keith. Keith Rittmaster was over there with a group, and he was talking about turtle conservation and what we need to do to protect the turtle. And Miss Mary Sue Davis was over there staying, and Dave Yeomans and some. I want to say Miss IPOC. I think we were there at the time. And so Keith
hung her head
Keith was. I know she cut her head. She knows where I'm going. This is not part of the David story, but he was there. But as Keith was talking about turtle conservation, Miss Mary Sue was just about 6 foot away from him, talking about turtle recipes. It's the truth. See, all my stories are true. I tell you. Yeah. She said if you slice it real thin, it quib.
How many of you had turtle stew?
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
Okay. Then you telling on yourself.
I am not saying anything. It's against the law, by the way. I tell people we have a cookbook there that and there's stewed robins in there. Don't knock it until you Hey.
Well, look. Let me tell you something.
I'm not through with my story.
No.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead. You go.
You finish yours.
All right, I'll finish.
I'm gonna tell you, then we'll finish yours. These are laws, breaking the laws. I went one time and went to a little bridge, caught a load of speckled trout. I don't care about a fishing license. Don't even like to hook a line. But anyway, the law was made at the bridge that everyone just undersized. Well, I started catching them. I said, you know what? They'd be good for supper. So I started throwing them in a bucket. And I didn't even know what you were supposed to have. I come home with a bucket full. Anyway, I was in the backyard cleaning them, and my son come up there, and he said, Daddy, aren't those fish illegal? I said, son, we can do two things here. I said, we can be a law-abiding citizen, or we can have speckled trout for supper. You can't have both. Finish your story.
That's good.
Sorry.
All right. Well, David, back to where David was. He was riding a four-wheeler going down one evening, and Mama Turtle was crawling up. So Mama Turtle does her thing. She crawls up there, and they'll dig a hole about a couple foot deep. They'll deposit somewhere about 100 to 125 or 30 eggs. And about 3 months later, those little nestlings, little turtles will come up. And the thing about it is, when mother gets done, motherhood's over. Ain't that something? That's crazy. How easy would that be? I know. So he had he kind of remembered. As a matter of fact, I think he had marked it with like a shell or something when she had left, because the tide got up that evening later on that night and kind of had washed her little tracks away, and big tracks. So the next morning, these students from Duke University were they knew that a turtle had crawled up there, but they didn't know exactly where it was. So Mr. David, with his morning coffee on the four-wheeler, came going down the beach. And those Duke students were there, kind of sniffing around. No pun intended. He was sniffing around, all right? And so Mr. David stopped to him and said, well, what are y'all doing? He said, well, we are here to document the turtles, loggerhead turtles that come on the beach, and started explaining what they were doing, And he said, I can find out where that turtle laid her eggs. They said, you can? He said, yeah. So he got off his four-wheeler and got down on his hands and knees. And got smelling. And that's what got me thinking about, see? And got smelling. And he would smell here, he said. He'd smell. He said, no, not there. And he would smell over here, and he'd say, no, not right there. And then he said, hey, right there. Sure enough, they dug up, and there was those eggs. They counted them. They weighed them all. They did all the little things they're supposed to do, like them little ping pongs. They put them back. They put that little sheet of screen over the top of them. It was years later, professors from Duke University would show up to the Cape looking for that old man that could smell turtle eggs.
I hope no one comes up to me years from now wanting to know about the horses.
Where's that man that can smell horse shit?
The one that knows all the can distinguish it.
That's a true story.
Well, that kind of makes me feel a little bit better that I'm not.
See, I
I'm
try
not
to I try
over-
to come down on your level.
So really be careful. Especially don't make nobody mad. If a local mad and you're trying to pick information out of them, no telling what they will do. And I like to tell true stories.
You're saying mine aren't true?
Well, I know these are true because these were actually happened to me.
All right, go ahead.
How many of y'all ever been around the Banks ponies? Anybody? Come on, being close. Hey, been pretty close. I've been around the Banks ponies all my life. I've been frightened one time in my life with the pony. Now I respect them, but I'm gonna tell you what happened. This was many years ago. All the youngins were little. Anyway, I've rambled the Banks. I've been one in that other since I was born. But there was a rock back where one of the cabins used to be, and I'm taking it. The rock's not native here. It come from a Spanish ballast or the pony, the ship's cody. Anyway, we've been over there, and that rock, and I wanted that rock. Nobody's Park Service in here. If you are, please leave. Anyway, I wanted that rock. Well, I couldn't tote that rock. So we playing this. I said, we're going back after that rock. So we picked the afternoon, and my wife got a big tub of chicken, and we were going to carry the young'uns, the dog, and we were going in a wagon. I said, I'm gonna put that rock in that wagon, I'm going to tote it. So we strike off, head over there. And if you got kids, well, I see you probably got grandkids. If you don't want them to do something, tell them to do it because they're going to do just the opposite. Well, I kept telling the young'un, don't give the dog the chicken bones. Well, I'm steering the boat, trying to navigate where we're at. I got three kids. Yes, three. Landon weren't even born. I had 3 kids, a dog, a wife, and a big tub of chicken. Well, just before we get to where we're going, I'm running along, and I hear the young'uns up there.
Well, wait.
And I looked. They had fed the dog the chicken bones.
Oh, my Lord.
The dog was running around the boat throwing up. Well, anyway, that just adds to the story. So anyway, we're right there where we're going, and I slow her down, don't even throw the anchor. The young'uns, the dog, the wife, everybody scattered, leave me with a dog full of chicken bone throw up. Well, anyway, I was getting that mess cleaned up, and Heidi's like, let's just go. I said, hell no, I'm not going anywhere. I've been through this. I'm gonna get that rock. So anyway, when I turned around and looked, the horses were gathered up on the beach, and there was one laying down. We actually thought there was something wrong with it. Well, then we had this chocolate lab there just throwed up all over everything. Next thing I know, she's ashore chasing the horses. And I'm squalling at the dog, the horses are jumping, and anyway, the horses actually pinned the dog. They'd killed the dog. I finally got the dog away from the horses. No, they would have. So anyway, she's like, well, let's go. Was it just too much? I said, no, sir. I'm going to get that rock. I don't care if none of you go. I'm going to get that rock. So we got the dog find a piece of rope. She's on a leash. I get the wagon. Well, we all walk up there together and finally find out where the rock's at. When I bent down to pick the rock up, the horses were surrounding me. All the way completely around me. I'm telling you, they were surrounded. Well, when I bent down to pick that rock up, the main horse, he bent down. I'm like, uh-oh. Well, I'm here with a dog clawing me. I got a wagon with a rock in it. Alan's are crying and squalling, and I'm like, shut up. Don't look on me in the eye. This is the truth. Watch out when somebody says this is the truth. But anyway, I mean, we're standing there and I'm like, you know, what are we gonna do? I guess that horse thinks I'm the leader. And I'm talking, shut up, quit. Well, I said, Yeomans, let's try to ease ahead. So when we stepped ahead, the herd stepped. The whole herd. I'm telling you, we were surrounded. They're like you see the Cowboys and the Indians, we were surrounded. Okay, well that worked. So we took another step. The herd step. This was about 15, 20 minutes of one step at a time. And when we got to the edge of the water, the horses opened up and let us pass. That's a true story. And I try to tell people, because these horses are part of my life. I love these horses. I wouldn't hurt one of them for nothing in this world. But when I see people over there, some people let their kids run, I'm like, these horses are not as friendly as you think they are. But I'm telling you, at one time I've been terrified, and that herd opened like, here's your chance, buddy. and we took it, and I'm going to get clothed in the wagon. Hey, true story.
You didn't poop on yourself, did you?
I don't know.
I could have. Well, I was going to say they might have smelled it
They
and knew you were a local.
I want to know if you still have the rock.
Yes, sir. Actually, one of the children spoke about it the other night, and they actually said they would like to have that rock. He was with us, so I'm going to give him that.
You've
rock.
had it 20-something years now.
It's 20.
I was thinking Landon.
20. The Landon weren't even.
Yeah, I started saying Landon.
Landon's
Yeah.
23.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had it 25
25 years. Yeah.
Tell us how big it was.
The rock.
Yeah.
It was about that long, and it was real. It was a slate rock. It's not nothing. It's not nothing native here.
Interesting.
But I got it. And
Hello.
is that you again?
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Give me that phone.
I got another Davy Yeomans story. This is Davy Yeomans. As I told you earlier, Davy Yeomans would try to help people out around the community, and he was because he would go back and forth to town, which we called town Beaufort, and if you go into Moorhead, that was just Moorhead, but going to town from Harker's Island would have been Beaufort, and most of the time it would be on the skiff going back before the bridge and on the ferry. But anyway, he would go to town back and forth in the fact that he was a county commissioner, and he kind of knew some of the judges and lawyers and people that were making all those decisions. We, and I'm speaking for myself, we tried to avoid town. We if you catch too many speckled trout or not the right size, you didn't want town coming to see you. So that was just it. But anyway, there was two fellas from the island, and they were down to the Easter one day, and they decided, because it gets kind of boring on the island at that time, so they decided that they were going to shoot at some pelicans.
I hope this is the one.
You've heard this story too, haven't you?
I've heard
It's
one.
a true story, isn't it?
Just keep
Yeah,
going.
just-
No, just keep going.
So
If it ain't, I'll tell the truth.
So they got so Ricky Moore and Shadrow got caught. Ricky Moore and Shadrow got caught shooting pelicans or shooting at them,
Yep.
and had to go to court. And Mr. David, he said, "Look, I can't let these here boys. They were, from the island there that, not quite learned and everything." He said, "I can't let them go to court by themselves." He said, "I'll go help them out. I'll go represent them." So sure enough, they show up on the day of their court, and the judge is there, and he says, "You're in charge of shooting an endangered species, pelicans, and how do you plead?" And they were like, "We plead guilty." And he said, "Well, I'm gonna throw the book at you. We're gonna make an example out of you two, because you cry from the island, you do this kind of stuff all the time. You finally got caught. We're just gonna make an example out of the two of you. We're gonna throw the book at you." And Mr. David was like pleading with the judge, said, "Please, you just don't understand, Judge. These boys are, were just ignorant of the law. They just didn't know what they were doing. They really need to take it easy on them." So the judge said, "Nope. I appreciate you coming here and standing up for them and doing what you can, but they need to learn their lesson." So he looked at him. He said, 30 days in jail or $1,000. Ricky Moore looked at Shadrow and said, "I don't know about you, pal, but I'm going to take that $1,000. Judge looked at Mr. Davis. He said, "Get them boys out of here."
Lord, I just went blank.
Did you go blank?
I went blank. That was sort of like,
Have I got?
we sort of tell things, and it might not be the right person, not be by the right place, might be the right thing. It's like one fella, what was his name? Marshall. I think he said Marshall went to down to Cape Canaveral, Florida, and he come home. He was headed home. Well, Marshall never did show up. He never did show up. It was 2 or 3 days later when he finally got home, and he finally asked him, said, "Marshall, what in the name of God took so long to get to Florida?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "But you believe one thing, I ain't going to Baltimore no more." Have you heard that one?
No, I ain't heard that one. This is one. This is one of Sonny's stories, and in the book there, when I was reading this, he calls him Silas Jones. I think we talked about this earlier. He calls him Silas Jones. I don't know Silas Jones, but I'm pretty sure I know who it was about. So I'm going to use the real name.
Uh-oh.
All right, the real name, and if we'd have had Fish House Lars back in the day, he would have given Rodney a run for his money. Some of y'all know Rodney, and his name was Charlie Claude Jones.
Oh my goodness.
Charlie Claude, y'all, anybody here know Charlie Claude?
I know Charlie Claude.
That was way back in the day. All right.
Should have been a comedian.
Charlie Claude Jones, Daddy, he worked down there with Daddy one time at the port. He said every day for about 4 years, either break time or lunchtime, he said he'd come in every day and tell a different joke and a different story. Every day for about 4 years. Well, this is one about, Sonny calls it Silas Jones, but we'll call him Charlie Claude because I'm pretty sure that's who it was about. Sonny didn't want to put that in print. So anyway, Charlie Claude, back to shooting pelicans, he got caught. First time he ever had to go to court, believe it or not, Charlie Claude, first time he ever had to go to court was he was shooting seagulls. Charlie Claude was shooting seagulls, got caught. And so he goes to court. He stands in front of, since we're on the court thing, we'll tell this one. He stands in front of the judge, and the judge says, before the judge even starts, Charlie Claude was never lost for words. He said, "Your Honor, I'm just going to be honest with you." He said, "I didn't know that shooting a common old seagull was against the law." He said, "Now I know shooting a loon is against the law. You cannot shoot a loon." He said, "I knew that." He said, "But a seagull, I just had no clue. Your Honor, please be lenient on me, because I didn't know that a seagull was against the law." So the judge looks at him and says, "Charlie, I know it's your first time here in court, but you're going to have to pay the fine for shooting seagulls. It's against the law to shoot." I personally don't understand. We need to kind of eliminate some of them. But anyway, need to go down to L's, throw a lot of French fries out, and mow them down. Anyway, but so that's just my personal opinion. But anyway, so the judge, looked at him and said, "I'm gonna, fine you X number of dollars. That don't really matter." So Charlie, he said, "Look, I got one thing to ask you." He said, "Why were you shooting seagulls?" He said, "Well, Pauline was his wife, my grandmother's sister. So that's how we're kind of connected there with Charlie Claude, just by marriage, I think. Of course, with a circle wreath, you never know. All right. So he said, "Your Honor, the reason I'm shooting them seagulls," he said, "Miss Pauline can take that seagull and cook that down just right with that gravy and all that stuff." He said, "It tastes just like a loon."
Now, wait a minute. Now, for those of you that didn't know Charlie Claude or had never, he was a real person. He was
Oh yeah, I got another Charlie Claude story.
But he could tell you something. He should have been a comedian. He'd tell you something, and he'd never crack a smile, and you'd leave your belly hurt. It was one year. There was an old store on the island. It was Cab's old store. Everybody gathered, fish crowd gathered there. Anyway, it was just a gathering place.
Kind of like the modern Cleveland Davis store.
Yep. Well, Charlie was in there one day, there leaning on and we're going to call it the drink box. We're going to call it like we said it would have said it then. He was there on the leaning against the drink box, had a drink in one hand, and we'll call it a drink to cake. A drink could be a Pepsi, a Dr. Pepper, anything. The cake could be a Nab, Honey Bud. It was a drink to cake. Well, Charlie was sitting there leaning against that, had his drink and cake, and somebody from off.
We know where that is now.
We know where off's at. And in my generation, anybody from off, it didn't make no difference where they were from Raleigh. If they were from anybody that wasn't here, we didn't know they were from Raleigh. They could have been from New York City, but they were from Raleigh. Anyway, Charlie was sitting on that drink box, and one of them fellas from off come in there about half mad, and trust me, it was nowhere near as bad as it is today with people from, anyway, I'm not going to say it. But anyway, that man come in there, he was just fussing, raising Cain. He said, you know what? He said, say some of the craziest people on this island I ever seen in my life. He said, Charlie took him a sip, never cracked a smile. He said, yep, and most of them be going after Labor Day. Is that right? That's what you heard?
Yeah. Well, here's another one.
Okay.
I got another Charlie Claude story, since we're on Charlie Claude here. Charlie Claude had a job on a scallop boat up north, and matter of fact, I worked with George Jr. That was my college scholarship. I tell people I was not quite as smart as my daughter. I didn't get those. So I'd go off summers, and we'd work on the sea scallop boat, Captain George Jones Jr. And guess what? The only music he allowed on the boat, see, we didn't have like internet at the time. George Jones. He stopped loving her today. I learned to love it. Anyway, so anyway, Charlie Claude got a job on the scallop boat. Was up north, and Pauline was home doing her thing, whatever. He always said, this is a little sidebar. He always said Pauline was the luckiest woman alive. He said she don't have to wash dishes. He said because we don't have any. He said she ain't got to sleep floor because we don't have a broom. He said she's the luckiest woman alive. Anyway, he was off doing his thing, fishing, and they came home early. He said, I'm gonna do some things right. Miss Pauline's such a nice woman. He said, I'm gonna do some things. So he went by Louis Barbershop. You remember Louis Barbershop?
Yes, sir.
He went by Louis Barbershop, got him a nice haircut.
One style, that was it.
That was it. Yeah. Got some smell good stuff on him. He went and got him some good clothes, got cleaned up good, and fancied up a little bit. Got him some flowers. Went to town, got him some flowers, and he shows up that evening. It's kind of late, dark. It's gone down, and he shows up at the house. Miss Pauline didn't know he was showing up early like this. See. So he says, and he was telling his story now, he said he slipped in there. Miss Pauline was kind of laying on her side back to the door. You kind of picture. And so he gets under the covers. He snuggles up there behind Miss Pauline. She kind of looks over the corner of her shoulder there. She said, Honey, I don't know who you are, but Charlie Claude's going to be home any minute. You're going to have to do what you're going to do.
Lord, Amber, how did we get hung up?
Charlie told that one. Let's not tell no more Charlie Claude jokes.
Oh, boy. How about a ghost story? Anybody like ghost stories? Now, this was true. Remember, I was there, but I didn't see it. Me and my wife decided it's been, I come everything several years ago, a few years ago.
Oh, yeah.
A few years ago, could have been last year, could have been 30 years ago. But anyway, we like to adventure, and we decided one weekend we were going to take the old Blazer, old four-wheel drive truck, and we were going to load it down, and we were going to go camping. And we used to do that a lot. All our youngins was growing, we were going to go honeymooning. Well, when you plan to get on the ferry, you've got to go with it. You plan a month ahead, well, it's blowing 40 mile an hour northeast. We went anyway. To the hell with it, we're going to make the best of it. So we get over there on the beach, and we just got this little pup tent, two-man tent, really a two-man tent, actually a one-person tent, uncomfortably.
Oh, yeah.
Well, anyway, she said, where in the world are we gonna put that tent up tonight? It's blowing a solid gale. I said, I know what we're gonna do. Any Park Service in here, again, I'm not a crook or a lawbreaker, but I do bend them. Anyway, I said, I know what we're gonna do. She kept asking, what we're gonna do? I said, I tell you what. I said, about 4 o'clock, all them park rangers, they start headed out of here. There won't be nobody over here but us. I said, we're gonna go there in the village, and Roland and Susie, they had a camp over there, which they had lost it by then.
Right.
I said, we're gonna put that tent on Roland and Susie's porch. That a covered porch just right for the tent. I said, we're gonna pull in there like we own the place.
With a lid of wind.
Yeah. She said, we can't do that. She's a rule follower.
It's a good thing you're married to her.
I'm a rule bender. And I'm like, you know what? Anyway. So about 4:30, 5 o'clock, everybody started thinning out, and I headed over there. I pulled up, backed up in there by the porch, just like if it was mine. Unloaded the truck, set the tent up right there. It was a little nook there, and it was just right out the wind. Set the grill up, cooked our supper on the porch. Had a good time. Anyway, she don't never sleep, and I can fall asleep with an oyster rock. Anyway, we crawled in there, and I'm guessing I drifted off to sleep. Well, then I wake up sometime in the middle of the night, and I'm hungry. I'm always hungry. I woke up, jumped right up. What do we got here to eat, you know? And when I wake up, she's sitting in the tent, Indian style, looking at me. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, nothing, don't worry about it. Anyway, I got up to eat, and I went back to bed. Well, we got up the next morning, and we wanted to get away from there for the Park Service. Got there. Anyway, we got packed, headed off, went down to the beach. I found a place, was cooking breakfast, and we'd eat. And she says, now, my wife's from Beaufort, so I consider her from off. There's no way she's going to ever be a down easter heart. She's got roots to Atlantic. She's got just enough Beaufort in her to be from off. Anyway, we were eating, and I noticed she's kind of fidgety. And she said, she finally gets through eating. She says, well, I've eaten now. I guess I can tell you. I'm like, tell me what? She said, did you see anything last night? I said, no, sir.
It's like you looking at
Yeah, I said, no. I mean, when I go to bed, I'm serious business. I'm going to bed. She said, you didn't see nothing. I said, no, I didn't see nothing. What's going on? And she still believes it. I don't believe it, but she does. She says, well, what time you were there asleep, I kept hearing something. I started hearing an old man singing a little tune, and he was singing. And she said, and he started out real nice singing at first, and he was singing a tune, you better get while the getting's good. You better get while the getting's good. And then she actually saw him. She says, an old man in bib overalls and a straw hat. And said, and then he was real anxious about you need to get while the getting's good. And that's about the time I guess I woke up and disturbed everything. And I said, well, honey, you're talking about David Yeomans. And she said, well, I don't know what David Yeomans, who he is or what he looks like. Well, to finish the story up, when we got home, I pulled some pictures up of David Yeomans, and that's what she described as David Yeomans. Now, David Yeomans was not, I think that was something in her mind. I don't believe it. But David Yeomans wasn't that kind of person, but that's exactly who she described was, better get while the getting's good.
How about that? Well, and I kept looking at our time here, and I know, but I got one last one. And since you going back to the yeoman side, I want, and this is a new one for me. I've told it a couple of times here, and I learned this from my mother. So this is about Gary and Novella Yeomans. You haven't heard that one, have you?
No.
Gary and Novella Yeomans. They live Red Hill, North Carolina. If you know where that is, that's on Harker's Island, but it's the western side. So they lived up to Red Hill, North Carolina, and Gary and Novella Yeomans, the Newbern Mall had just been built. Okay, and some of you that are locals that can think that far away, do you remember when the Newbern Mall was built? All right. Well, you got to think, Havelock, the base was built about 41, and then between Havelock and New Bern was nothing. I mean, it was pretty woods, and, by the time you got to New Bern. Well, the New Bern Wall was just built, and he had him a brand new Chrysler. He had bought him a brand new Chrysler, and Miss Novella looked at Gary one day, and she said, "Let's go to the New Bern Mall and check it out." So sure enough, they got that brand new Chrysler hooked up, and they headed to the New Bern Mall. Like people, malls were new at the time, and people was wanting to go. So anyway, on the way, they got past Havelock there, where all those trees are, and a cat ran out in front of them, and he met his demise. Sorry, you're a dog person anyway. So the hell with the cat, right? So the cat ran out for and ran over it, and it seemed like it was a team cat. It was somebody's, it was nice and groomed. It wasn't like a wild looking cat. And Miss Novella, being the kind-hearted person she was, she looked at Mr. Gary and she said, "We're not leaving that cat as roadkill." She said, "I got one of them old paper bags. You remember them paper bags you get at the grocery store? She've had them folded up right in the back." She said, "We're going to put him in there." And she said, "When we get home with him, we're going to give him a proper burial, because I'm not leaving that cat on the side of the road." So sure enough, what Miss Novella said, she got. So Mr. Gary got the bag, put the cat in it, and they headed to New Bern. Okay? So they get... No? All right. So they get to the New Bern Mall. They get a little nice parking spot over there, right close to the front there. And Miss Novella and Mr. Gary, they said, we just can't leave that cat in the car. So number one, it's going to get real hot today. And we're going to only stay for a couple hours. So I think the cat will be all right if we take that bag and we'll set it right out to the back tar of the car. Now, a tar, that's what we call a T-I-R-E, a tar.
It's a tar, not a tar.
Little sidebar here. When I was teaching student teaching at New Hanover High School, and I was explaining about like different types of businesses, and I was talking about like this man that could sell old car tars, and they were like, "What?" And I said, "Oh, that's right. Y'all don't, old car tires. So y'all, they're tires. Set it out by the back tires." But she set out by the back car tar, and they headed toward the front entrance of the museum, I started saying, of the mall. All right. Well, Miss Novella happened to turn around. You're smiling already. Miss Novella happened to turn around, and not only had the people who wanted to check out the mall, but people who wanted to check out the people that was checking out the mall had showed up. So, these people that were like the pickpocketers and the people that were going to take advantage of people, and, the people that were not very, good, So we'll call this lady, we'll call her a shady lady, all right? So she noticed this kind of shady lady looking at that bag and looking toward the door and kind of looking around to see if the owners were by. And they were looking at the bag, and Miss Novella said, "Gary, look." So sure enough, the lady kind of looked both ways real quickly, just kind of, in a discreet way, picked that bag up and like she owned the place and started walking away and went over to the local soda shop and goes in the soda shop with her bag. Gary Novella said, "We got to follow and watch this." So they go in, they set to one of the booths, and she sits at the bar over there, to one of those little soda shop, stools. You kind of picture, what I'm talking about. She sits there, she puts that bag beside her. She acts like she's going to order her like an ice cream or a little Coke or something, or like a drink and a pack of nabs, Drinking a cake. So she sits there, and as they're getting their order ready, she takes that bag and unfolds it real carefully. And she reaches down in that bag. And you can imagine about the time that her hand hit like maybe the gooey part and the fur. Okay, kind of picture that scene. And it probably kind of like got good and sticky. It might have been still warm a little bit. She fell off that stool and passed out in the floor. Here she goes, legs up. The bag's still sitting there. The patrons come running to her. They're trying to wake her up. She's out like a light. I mean, she's gone. So that, 911 is called. I guess they can call 911 at the time.
What was it then? 411?
I don't know. I think it was like, "Help!" Anyway, the rescue squad, they're still trying to revive her when the rescue squad comes up with the paddy wagon with the stretcher and everything, And Gary Novella says, The last thing they saw was that lady on that stretcher, and one of them our EMT workers had picked that bag up and put it right on her chest.
Make sure she had a bag with her.
Make sure she had that bag heading to the hospital.